Well, if you considered Akron and Northern Iowa sort of dipping the toes for Wyoming just to see where they're at as a team offensively, taking on Utah at home, week 3, you're diving full in, and it's going to be interesting to see how the Cowboys fare against the explosive, top 20 team in Utah, coming in with, one of the best quarterbacks in the country and an offense that hasn't been stopped thus far. You got Devin Dampier coming in. He's got 5 passing touchdowns on the year, another rushing touchdown. He really hasn't had to rely on his feet so far this year, even though he, very much well can put up, a century mark in a game. He has a much better unit around him than he did at New Mexico, where he really doesn't have to do that much. He can rely on his guys. He can rely on his defense to, come up big, get some stops. And now he's just sort of coasting, doing what he favors, choosing his weapons, destroying defenses so far against UCLA and Cal Poly. How does this Wyoming team limit Dampier to the best of their ability? I'm not sure. It's going to be interesting to see. Utah coming in 22.5 point favorites. The over/under on this game is 48.5. Man, I would expect Utah's going to get in the end zone quite a bit this weekend. I could see them putting up, 5-6 touchdown type of game. The question is, how does Wyoming limit the offense, and what can they do on their side of the ball? Can Keenan Anderson and that running game really get going and sort of control the possession, control the clock to the best of their ability, limit possessions for the Utes? I think the Cowboys are gonna have to rely on their trio of backs, get Sam Scott going early, and pound it with Samuel Harris and Teron Kelman. Get those guys rolling. If you can just control time of possession, give Utah as few opportunities as possible to score, you can manage the game a little bit better. You're gonna require your defense to come up big, and so far the defense has looked pretty solid against the competition they faced. Huge step up, top 20 team in the country. This is the first real test for Wyoming. They've looked they look lethargic in the game against Akron. They looked much better in Northern Iowa. This is a huge step up in competition, and you're at home, but can you not get completely demolished in this game? Can you stay within themselves? Can they not let it get down 3-4 touchdowns in the first half? Can you try and match a score for a score? If the Cowboys let Dampier break containment, they're gonna be in for an ugly game. I see it being 3-4 touchdown type of differential until we see Wyoming be that type of team, which they very much well could be this weekend. It's a 6 p.m. Mountain Time on the CBS Sports Net. Be sure to check this game out.